What I really like about Isabelle's story is it talks about family. And her family is all here tonight. Granddaddy, who taught me as a student, and really happy to see you all as a family. How many people are here with a family member tonight? Good stuff. So Isabelle, we saved the best for the last, and as Chris said earlier, we should include you, and we want more youth every year. Isabelle Agnew.
So as she said, my name is Isabelle Agnew, and I'm a grade 12 student at Moncton High School. I'm here to share my story and to talk about my depression so that we can break the stigma surrounding mental health. In middle school, I was a fairly normal teenager. I excelled in school and had many friends. I acquired a job at the Times and Transcript in grade 8, and I was a happy person. But like most grade 9s, I felt conflicted when I entered high school. On the one hand, I hated making new friends. But on the other, some of my old friends weren't healthy for me anymore. Then in the winter of that year, my parents split up. At first, that separation felt like a relief. I had known for a while that my parents weren't in a healthy relationship and that they would be better off as individuals instead of as a couple. It felt like a weight off of my shoulders when my dad moved into his own apartment, and it was an easy transition because he only lived around the corner. But then came the guilt. At that point in the year, I felt friendless, and it seemed as though my parents were paying more attention to how my sister felt about their separation because she was so young. I felt guilty for my parents' divorce because I had wanted it to happen for so long. I think my guilt grew stronger as my parents' feelings came into account. I started to realize that they were just as conflicted about the split as I was, and it made me feel terrible for being so selfish. While things between my parents eventually settled, my life didn't seem to regulate. Going into my grade 10 year, something felt off. I noticed right away that I was missing a lot of school. In grade 9, I had missed a class here and there, but in grade 10, there were days when I physically couldn't get myself out of bed. And when I did manage to drag myself to school, I had a hard time sitting through my classes. When Moncton High was shut down and we were separated between Edith Cavell and Northrop Frye, things seemed to get even worse. I had teachers judging me for my absences, which made me more anxious. After the move, my homeroom teacher was changed, and my new teacher immediately judged me for how often I was missing school. The first time I met him, he said to me, "Oh, you miss a lot of school," in one of those tones that makes you feel bad about yourself. My other teachers weren't very different. Many of them judged me, when teachers make those sly comments about how much you missed the day before, it makes you more anxious about showing your face in their class. For example, I hated going to my science class solely because I felt like my teacher was looking down on me. I'm normally an honors student, but it got so bad that year that when I went to get my report card in June, I would have been happy to get a 62 in English and a 60 in science. I honestly thought I was going to fail. In grade 11, my lack of energy continued, and I started missing classes again. Eventually, I realized that the lack of energy that I was experiencing was stemming from my sadness. One day, I mentioned to my mom that I thought I might be depressed. She told me to look up the symptoms. Reading that list, I realized that the only symptom that didn't match with my life at that point in time was suicidal thoughts. My mom and I went to the doctor's office in the fall of 2011, and he prescribed me antidepressants. Originally, that depressed me even more. It made me so sad that I was 16 years old and I was already taking pills on a daily basis to regulate what I thought was a crazy brain. Initially, I didn't think I'd ever get better. I felt hopeless. So how did I get better? Well, obviously those pills were the first step for me. Antidepressants definitely aren't for everyone, and you have to monitor yourself carefully while on them because antidepressants can cause suicidal thoughts in teenagers. In fact, during the months that I was on them, I lost a significant amount of weight, but those pills helped as the stepping stone for me. Then I heard on the announcements at school that my guidance counselor was holding a depression and anxiety support group. I gave her my name because I thought that it might help to be around others who understood what I was going through. While the pills started me on my path to mental health, I honestly believe that support group was what really changed my point of view. On the first day, we introduced ourselves, and many of us admitted to how long we had been depressed. Hearing what others had to say made me realize that I wasn't alone in what I was going through. Talking with the support group members on a daily basis helped me open up about my depression with people. As I mentioned before, I have a job at the Times and Transcript, and I write a weekly column in the teen section. A few weeks into going to the support group, I decided to open up about my depression to my readers. I wrote an article about how I've struggled with depression. I also mentioned that the stigma and the taboo associated with mental illness needed to be stopped. From then on out, I wasn't shy about my depression. At first, I was nervous about the publication. I was scared that people who had never suffered from depression wouldn't understand what I was going through, but the response was heartwarming. When I returned to school after my article was published, I had several teachers who immediately discussed my depression with me. My math teacher mentioned that he had read the article and wanted to make sure that he wasn't being too hard on me. I even heard over and over that I was brave for writing that article, and that it was greatly appreciated. It made me feel like I had finally done something right. Opening up about my depression was like a breath of fresh air. It meant that I had no more secrets. It meant that when I was absent, I didn't have to lie to my teachers because I wasn't ashamed anymore. For me, there were 3 steps to getting over the depression. Seeing the doctor was that first step because it allowed me to officially recognize the problem at hand, and he helped me find a short-term solution. Then, meeting other teens with depression and discussing our problems together made me realize that I wasn't alone, and certainly helped me feel happier in life. Finally, opening up to everyone and eliminating the stigma, I believe, is what eventually helped alleviate me of my depression. Today, I no longer have depression, but I certainly have those bad days. I still try to talk about it in order to knock down those social walls that are trying to stigmatize the illness, and I'm always open when someone needs to talk because talking is what helped me. Last week, I participated in Moncton High's mental health conference, which was held over 2 days at the Rotary Lodge and was attended by over 40 students. On the second day, I stood before my peers and shared my story with them. After I sat down, many opened up and discussed what was going on with them and how they were dealing with their mental illnesses. I know that not everyone has the public voice that I do, but publicity isn't necessary to break these walls. My peers, by sharing their stories, took a step towards erasing the stigma. So now it's your turn. Whether you do or have suffered from a mental illness or not, talk about it so that we can conquer the stigma.